Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Morning Minutes. Myself, Michael Bergio, James Blaine-Plough, talking about the COVID lockdowns with commercial agents there, and how it has affected the day-to-day logistics for buyers, sellers, tenants, and agents, all of us in between. There's always a lot of talk about the residential side of things, all the rules coming forward, but I thought we should share a light on commercial and how that has been. But James, so you've been doing commercial now for a couple of years. Obviously, most of it's been sort of through some sort of COVID, but I'm sure you remember the day-to-day. But take it, especially the last sort of, how long has this lockdown been? 3 months? Has there been much change in actual logistics, like residential lost open homes and that ability? What's it like been for commercial?
Well, yeah, look, it's a good point. And within the industry, it's been shaken logistically because of changes that have had to be implemented. But typically what seems to happen is residential sales and residential leasing, that's where all the legislation gets plastered into, but commercial sort of gets a little bit forgotten. So we don't do open homes in commercial anyway. At the moment, we just always run buyer appointments frequently. The only difference really in regard to showing properties has been that you just can't take 2 people inside one property at once. So logistically, I think it hasn't changed too much for commercial. It's obviously had effects on the commercial side of real estate for owners and for tenants, and there's a million knock-on effects. But as a commercial agent, there's really little to no difference. And I don't know if you're seeing anything different at all, but I think it remains largely unchanged for us.
Yeah, like let's step aside the actual market of commercial and the logistics. Like if you look at it, as we do both, residential, to sell a property, that source of inquiry, energy, the rapport with the buyers is really initiated at that open home. You have 10, 20, 30, 40 people there. It's a bit of an event for the property, and then you follow up with private appointments. And that's probably, you ask any agent, that's probably one of their biggest sources to sell the property and really get new listings. So when that was taken away from agents, it hurt them a lot mentally and logistically for that. And they had to really adapt to a lot of private appointments. But with commercial, as you said, it was fairly like we never did open homes. It was always private appointments, quite normal. And also the inquiry level is very different. With like residential agents would say hold, let's say 3 properties and deal with 100 buyers within a week or whatever the time period is. Or a commercial agent may deal with 50 properties, 100 properties, and may only be dealing with 20 buyers really active, or even less at that within that week. So it's a big opposite to it. So the where it did affect the commercial was you hear the sentiment in residential. It's on the newspapers. It's on Channel 9. Rates are down. Market's going to crash. You hear that. When you're speaking with 100 buyers on a weekend on Sunday opens and they all ask you, do you think the market's going down? You can sort of work your way through it. But with commercial, it was almost just silent. If you look at listing volumes for sales, it's down from Northern Beaches from about 150 active listings to 70, 80. And a lot of them are not even real listings. It's probably even lower to 10 to 20 of real active listings. When I mean not real, some agents will leave an ad online to create the inquiries, a little bit how residential used to be. And leasing used to sit on 700 to 800 for lease properties. It's down to 460. So it's almost a bit of silence across the board, which has been great for some of the older stock. Like, James, how many properties did you lease that prior to COVID were empty for 6 to 12 months? And then it was just like snap, snap, snap. Talk us through that sort of surge, and there's been a lot of activity with the existing stock.
Yeah, so I think in regards to that, what the big change was that I think we found landlords' motivations changed quite significantly. And previously, as you mentioned, if we might have had something along the lines of 800 to 900 for lease listings and maybe a couple hundred over the year for sale listings. For a consumer, there's still quite a lot of choice. So they have the freedom to be able to go pick around similar products and then make a choice on that decision of what they actually, they can inform their decision by looking at 5 of the same type of factory within a couple kilometer radius. As the stock levels dropped, I think it isolated the really, really serious people came out, and regardless of it not being the perfect site, they probably took something on anyway because it would have been for the betterment of their business rather than the betterment of the, can't think of a better word for it, but the lifestyle of where they're working, how they're working, what they're doing.
Yeah, they made sacrifices. Yeah, they may have gave up having the ideal shop front for a bigger space, or vice versa, gave up size to be on Pittwater Road, because what we haven't seen in many years in the market with commercial was there was huge negotiations going on, especially on landlords, because rents, unlike residential, where if a property is not rented, it's like drop it by $10, it will rent next day, next 3 weeks. Commercial owners, most owners are like, well, instead of dropping it by $10,000 a year, I'll just have it empty. A lot of properties are valued at its rental amount, and if it's empty, it's still valued at what it was rented from. I know Gold Coast made an awesome. This is what Gold Coast did. I remember someone telling me, maybe it been Luke. Whenever they had something empty on the shop front where an owner was holding out for that rent, they would subsidize the rent and put a pop-up store in there because they didn't want empty properties. Because we all know how that's felt in Brookvale for many years. Narrabeen went through it 5 years ago when the butcher left, Westpac left, the hair salon left, and there was just a row of emptiness. It can tear the soul out of that sort of community. So there was an initiative where it's like, we just want someone in there. And unfortunately, but when COVID hit, owners were like, okay, let's get a deal done. It was very easy to blame COVID on the low rent. It was almost like that scapegoat. Because, James, we had many properties that even if they were empty for a year, I don't want to name the properties, but you can probably remember a few in DY where they were previously rented for $70,000 a year. We had offers within months at 50, 60, but it was too low. COVID comes around. Yeah. We've got the same offer. It's taken. It's leased. Because at one stage after Meriton, there was like 12 empty shops. And from a suburb that may only lease one shop a month, if not, and only have one shop every month come on, it was a huge amount. And they just fell. You put some great businesses in there. Do you want to talk about some of them? You've had one on the show before.
Yeah, so a good example is if you're referring to the tattoo people, Caspian maybe, for example. So is it 665 Pittwater Road, a shop front that had been on the market for probably 9 to 12 months. It had 4 or 5 different agents working on it. We ended up getting a pretty good rent, but I think what the big difference was, these commercial landlords, and I think there's more emphasis when you're talking about landlords when you say commercial, not because of the type of property, but because of their mindset. They're very commercial people. For the most part, as you say, they're happy to leave a property vacant because regardless of the funds in and out, they were able to sustain it, and it didn't, to them, putting a low lease in is quite disheartening. It doesn't do anything for them. They lock themselves in for a long time. Businesses that were able to get going through these periods were able to give themselves a really good head start. Although you obviously can't foresee what's going to happen in the future. We've gone back through another lockdown now. But as examples like that, DY Brookvale had Pittwater Road with tons and tons of vacant properties. And they did gradually begin to fill up because what happened is, as you said a moment ago, there was a shift in the commercial mindset of a lot of these landlords where this might go on for a really long time, actually. So even if I can get maybe not the ideal rent, it's going to tick me over. And the likelihood is people aren't going to be buying these properties at the moment anyway. I might
Fisher Road's a perfect example, isn't it? 4/22 Fisher.
Yeah, and that's another really good one. So again, not many landlords are going to be accepting 1-year leases and, short little deals. Pop-up stores, fair enough for your retail here and there, but they're just like, okay, I don't actually know what the timeline is on this. It could be infinite for all we know. Let's just get someone in there. I think the rent in the end was probably about 60% of what it probably should be on a normal return. It would have been usually 40K plus GST and significant outgoings, leasing it for like 25 to 30K and just saying, I just want
including
to
out. So the net rent was 15 when the net rent should normally be 40. So that's a pure difference in two landlords. Like, we don't want to show, as we said with the commercial mindset, we don't want to throw a blanket and say they're all the same, because they're not. Some will have a property empty for a year to get 40 grand a year, because in their mindset, it may take a year, but I'll find a tenant for 3, 5, 10 years. They could be there 15 years. So I'm willing to wait to get the right rent, because I think we can all agree, if you've been in a property paying 15 grand a year, it's very hard to pay 40, even if it's worth it. It's just hard to have that jump. But then there's the other mindset where the owner's like, I don't have big costs on it. Something is better than nothing. I'm not relying on valuations. There's no bigger picture here. It's where some owner's like, well, if I lowered the price on that shop, I got the 12 shops next to it. They're going to all want discounts because I need one there. It was a very a singular approach. Almost out of nature, necessity, but it was like, there's that one property, I could keep it empty, or I could get 15, 20 grand a year. Better than nothing. And that's how it played out. And then I remember having those and we had those conversations with the owner. It's like, because the thing of a great commercial agent is understanding that with owners. Like, if you're advising an owner to take 15 a lower rent, knowing the troubles down the road with the other tenancies, if all those leases are up, they're really going to look, you may get that deal done then, but they're going to look pretty badly towards you in a year or two going, why did I get talked into it? I've now done all that. They'd almost rather have that shop empty because you're not giving the ammunition. I've had it many times when we've taken over new managements and we've just seen transactions apply. Yeah. So, but also where we had a good surge, where we did have a surge, was activity from tenants, because I think the message out there in their mind was, because normally they do throw that blanket,
let's find a good deal.
Yeah, because they're like, commercial owners are tough, very little room to negotiate, and some are. But the message went in the marketplace going, I may be able to get a deal. Let's start going out there. And I think within the first lockdown, we had our biggest month of leasing properties. When we thought we were going to go into a market where we wouldn't do anything, we had our biggest, because the parties came together, and it was really good. Everyone was happy. And especially how things have played out, like a year, like what are we, 18 months into it? No one's looking back. Let's say this ended after mid last year. People may be like, I jumped to conclusion, I rushed into it. But obviously, what's that saying? Monday quarterbacking, or hindsight's great. But it probably turned out to well for a lot of people who did just do stuff, basically.
Yeah. Well, that was it. If the people that were willing to bite the bullet and try to do something outside the square, find themselves a good deal, some of them were able to lock themselves into really good deals. Some landlords, on that flip side, the reverse side of that is they shot themselves in the foot because they wanted something to take over and they didn't realize what they're getting themselves into. But nonetheless, the commercial market, just as a whole, I think it's been shaken quite significantly. We've had denominations of the market that have stayed resilient, but there's a mindset to the game, I think, more so than in the mindset of a residential landlord. It's probably slightly different. So overall, I know we were talking about this morning commercial agents, how it's affected us. We probably haven't felt too much change aside from the conversations that we're having, but we're not physically, logistically having too much different. So things too much different haven't been happening. So yeah, it's been really interesting, and I think the most important part has been, as you said a moment ago, protecting your landlord with good advice so that they don't get themselves into a hole down the track. Maybe make short fixes aren't always going to be long-term gains.
And a lot of time with commercial, helping your landlord may seem like you're working for the tenant, but unlike residential, where sometimes people can be a bit bullish against the tenant, when you know a property could be empty for a year, you really don't want to lose that tenant or that opportunity. So you've really got to mediate it. Like as Luke said with one of his rentals, within 24 hours, one application, 4 inspections leased within 24 hours. Like, a lot of like with residential, you may have 4 people wanting it. You can be a bit bullish. It's almost like being the prettiest girl at school. I'd imagine you've got all the guys. You can pick and choose. Boom, boom.
Yeah.
Commercial's not like that. So I've said on the show many times with Mark, and we've discussed it. It's like that communication of both parties coming together. Yeah. That's a wrap. I think
that's a wrap.
Anything else you want to add?
No. We'll be back tomorrow. And
Another topic on commercial.
Commercial week.
Commercial week. See you guys. Bye.